Welcome back to the Leaders Debate presented by the Jamaica Debates Commission. We invite you, the public, again, to send us your questions via direct message on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok to Jamaica Debates. We now ask Dion Jackson Miller to start this segment with a question for Dr. Andrew Holness.
2021, you were appointed to the Queen's Privy Council, an ancient advisory body, and your administration's recent attempt at constitutional reform would have seen a removal of the British monarch from Jamaica's parliament and executive in phase 1, but not from our judiciary. Opposition or no opposition, referendum or not, can you tell us your position, whether you support the removal of the Privy Council as Jamaica's final court, and if so, when?
My position is that Jamaica should have its own local court as its final appellate court. But I also do respect the Caribbean Court of Justice, of which we are a part of its original jurisdiction. I will say, however, that on a matter as important as this, that forms the architecture of our nation, the people must be consulted. And that is why I put in place a process that would begin these consultations in a practical and phased basis, a process which has been thwarted by the opposition. Now, the leader of the opposition raises questions about democracy. On one hand, he does not want to consult. He wants the government to just act without consulting with the people, but then turns around and says that we are the ones undermining democracy. The leader of the opposition must be consistent. Democracy requires us to consult the people on these critical matters.
Mr. Golding?
Yes, Mr. Holness, shortly before the visit of Prince William to Jamaica, became a member of the King's Privy Council. So one has to wonder how he was choosing Jamaica when he did that. Anyway, to answer the question, we want to follow the Constitution, and the Constitution has been ruled by the Privy Council as the highest court as not requiring a referendum for the decision as to whether or not the CCJ should become the final court replacing the Privy Council. And that is what we think ought to be done. No other country that has moved away from the Privy Council has had a referendum to do so, and there are good reasons for that.
Our next question is from Giovanni Dennis, and it goes to Mr. Golding.
Mr. Golding, the PNP under your leadership has flip-flopped on a number of issues. For example, Julian Robinson on May 16, 2023, said the opposition takes no issue with the massive salary increase for parliamentarians. The very next day, the PNP released a statement objecting to the increase. Why should Jamaicans trust that you won't similarly make about turns on promises you are making now?
When Julian said that in Parliament, he was referring to the principle of parliamentarians getting an increase. He wasn't addressing the specifics of what was being proposed. We hadn't had a discussion around those specifics. When we looked at the details and we saw the massive increase that the Prime Minister was proposing for himself and for his ministers, we felt it was unconscionable to do that in the context where the public sector workers had just had their salary negotiations under some duress in relation to the teachers in particular, finalized, and many of them were getting 20% over 2 years. That is why we had to clarify our position, because it was not in accordance with what we thought that principle demanded. Now, over time, thinking can evolve. People change their positions on issues. So, for example, we are looking at this whole question of the 3.5 salary, the $3.5 million threshold increase. And we've seen where, as the debt target is achieved and resources can be released, it can be afforded. We weren't calling for 3.5 2 years ago, but we see that the need, inflation, etc., have happened. Cost of living pressures are there. Our evolution, our thinking has evolved, and we think that this is the right thing to do now, and we're committing ourselves to it. So, you know, I don't think the criticism is justified.
Thank you, Mr. Golding. Dr. Holness now has...
I have to call out that the leader of the opposition is telling lies. Julian Robinson stood in Parliament and said he supported the increase. Clear, and the tapes are there. Secondly, he calls the increase unconscionable, yet he takes it. I, Andrew Michael Holness, did not take it. The option was available to him as well. I chose not to take it. The leader of the opposition says, I have 28 bank accounts. That is absolutely not true. The report of the Integrity Commission includes accounts that are closed, accounts that are dormant, insurance accounts, and investment accounts.
Thank you.
They have
Thank
weaponized
you, Dr. Holness. Our next question is from Dion Jackson-Miller, and it goes to Dr. Holness.
Dr. Holness, in your 2016 manifesto, you said, quote, will make it mandatory that the appointment to sensitive posts be approved by a 2/3 majority in each House of Parliament, thereby requiring consensus between government and opposition. Now, the posts identified included the Office of Director of Public Prosecutions. Not only did you not implement this, but you disregarded the opposition's objections in the case of the recent extension, which led to a court case. Wasn't this a betrayal of the principle of bipartisanship that you had been proposing 9 years before?
Absolutely not. And indeed, in some instances, there are parliamentary review of sensitive positions. And I want to be also very clear that the constitutional reform process that we have put in place would take into consideration all of these proposals that were made. We cannot tinker with the Constitution, doing a little thing here and a little thing there, and therefore we decided to put it in a comprehensive process, again, which the opposition has thwarted. But since I have some time, let me also address some other issues about the leader of the opposition. In my own Integrity Commission report published in Parliament, there were no findings of corruption. All my assets are in Jamaica, and I have declared everything to the Integrity Commission. The leader of the opposition, however, also had a report from the Contractor General previously, which found that they benefited from public resources in an irregular way. They termed it a sweetheart deal. In my report, there is no such thing. None of my resources are ever connected to any public funds or any public resources. However, for the leader of the opposition, the report was very clear that their operations were considered to be irregular and a sweetheart
Thank you,
deal.
Dr. Holness. Mr. Golding has an opportunity to respond.
The Prime Minister has no interest in bipartisanship. He has strong dictatorial tendencies and really would prefer not to consult with the opposition at all if he didn't have to. And I say that based on my experience with him over the last 5 years. He talks about he didn't want to tinker with the Constitution. Then why did he seek to amend the Constitution as a one-off, tabling the bill and seeking to pass it on the same day to extend the DPP's tenure beyond what was constitutionally allowed? That was tinkering, Prime Minister, so come on. And in terms of Integrity Commission reports, my declarations have been certified every year as being proper. Yours have not, because you are under investigation for illicit enrichment.
Mr. Golding. Our follow-up question now, Dion Jackson-Miller has indicated she'd like to use the first of her follow-up questions.
On the same issue of the DPP's appointment, Principal Dr. Holness doesn't require constitutional amendments, though. And if it is that you were committed to the principle of bipartisanship, why would you have rejected such strongly worded opposition coming from the opposition leader?
End of the day, this matter was taken to the court, and the courts decided, and the DPP was reinstated. I want to also clarify something that the leader of the opposition said. The investigations carried out by the Integrity Commission are at an end. I am not currently under any investigation. There were no findings of corruption or charges. The leader of the opposition continues to try to weaponize these things because that is the only crutch he has to stand on. I, Andrew Holness, am thoroughly transparent.
Thank you, Dr.
virtue
Holness.
of this
Thank you, Dr.
investigation.
Holness. Mr. Golding has the opportunity to respond.
Again, Andrew Holness is being disingenuous and tricky. The Integrity Commission referred his matters to the Financial Investigations Division, a law enforcement agency charged with investigating serious financial crimes, for further investigation. What was his response? When there was a vacancy at the head of it, he sought to appoint or influence the appointment of somebody who is his close personal friend and who had said publicly on nationwide radio that he didn't see anything wrong in the report on Mr. Holness's financial situation, the Integrity Commission's report. It was clearly a set-up job, and we feel that very strongly that this needs to be addressed.
Thank you, Mr. Golding. Our next question is from social media. I'm going to hand over to Amoy.
Malik on Facebook says, many Jamaicans feel the economic growth that's been reported hasn't lowered their grocery bills or electricity costs. How do you measure economic success beyond the statistics?
Dr. Holness has the opportunity to respond first.
The first measure is income. And 280,000 jobs have been created in Jamaica, which means that more Jamaicans have income. There is a rise in income. Let's look at the minimum wage. The Jamaica Labour Party government has tripled the minimum wage. So there are more Jamaicans earning more at the lower levels of our country. Further, access to basic amenities. 350,000 Jamaicans have access to potable water, and in our next term, we will ensure that the 900,000 Jamaicans which now don't have reliable or full access to water will have access to water. Transportation, public transportation. We have done an amazing job in reducing bus fares and increasing the convenience and efficiency of public transportation, including implementing a rural bus fare system. On electricity, we have reduced the GCT on electricity, a promise made by the previous government and not kept. We have done it in a sustainable way. But more importantly, we have not placed any new taxes on the people of Jamaica since our government has been managing the fiscal affairs of this country.
Mr. Golding has an opportunity to respond.
First of all, I think the question is sound because statistics don't tell the full picture. Jamaica's competitiveness has been falling, yet they say that we have record low unemployment. Several 100,000 Jamaicans are outside the labour force and are not measured for that purpose. And indeed, you're regarded as being employed if you're employed 1 hour a week. 55% of Jamaicans are suffering from food insecurity. That is what the United Nations says, the FAO, which is an agency of the UN, says. 55% of Jamaicans are not getting adequate nutrition. That is not consistent with prosperity or low poverty rates or low unemployment rates. As for transportation costs, those are extremely high for many Jamaicans, which is why we want to introduce the RIDE program, a subsidy for rural children to help them to get to school in an affordable way. It's $10,000 per child who needs it in each family. So if you have more than one child, each one of them would qualify for this, because we recognize that that is one of the causes of absenteeism in schools at the moment. As for electricity, the rate and cost of electricity under this government has gone way higher than where we left it at 23 cents per kilowatt hour. Now it's over 40. And as for the GCT, they are providing a subsidy at the moment, but they haven't said for how long, and there's no commitment to keep it on.
Thank you, Mr. Golding. We are now going to be taking a short break, and we invite you to stay tuned.
The general elections debates are presented by the Jamaica Debates Commission